Hello, my dear listeners. Please write in the comments which city or country you are listening to us from. And don't forget to subscribe and like. Enjoy listening. The phone rang at 3:17 in the morning. David Clark knew that calls at such an hour only brought bad news. Mr. Clark, your daughter is in the ICU. Overdose. You should come. Right now. The hospital corridors smelled of disinfectant and despair. Lily lay motionless, connected to machines, 18 years old, a whole life ahead. She left a note, the nurse said quietly. David unfolded the crumpled piece of paper. Dad, I can't do this anymore. Blake Hunter and his friends have broken me. Every day is torture. I'm sorry. Something died in David's chest at that moment. Something else was born. 3 months later, he stood in front of Riverdale High School. In his briefcase lay fake documents, recommendation letters, and a plan that would change lives forever. A plan for revenge. Mr. Clark? Welcome to Riverdale. Principal Robert Anderson extended his hand. I hope you can help us with our troubled students. David shook his hand, studying the nervous twitch of the principal's eyelid. Tell me more about them. Blake Hunter, Mason Lee, Connor Stone, talented kids from good families, but they have certain disciplinary issues. What kind of issues? Anderson hesitated. Nothing serious. Boyish pranks. Their parents are generous donors, you see? David understood. Money covered any sins. The previous teacher, Mr. Collins, unfortunately couldn't cope. Nervous breakdown. He was saying something about rats in his desk and fake photographs. Fake photographs? The ramblings of a sick man. Anderson laughed nervously. Kids aren't capable of that. Oh, they are more than capable, David thought. Room 237. David set up his things and turned on the hidden camera in the board. 3 more micro cameras in the corners. Everything was being recorded in real time. Over the past 3 months, he had studied the basics of private investigation, hacked several social media accounts, and learned to read people like open books, all for this moment. The bell rang. The kids entered the classroom. Ordinary teenagers, laughing, jostling, and then they walked in. Blake Hunter, tall, confident, with a predator's smile. Behind him, Mason Lee, a stocky guy with cold eyes. Connor Stone brought up the rear, nervously glancing around. David felt his hands clench into fists. He recognized those faces from the photographs in Lily's police case. So, he began calmly, my name is Mr. Clark. Today we will talk about consequences. Blake yawned dramatically. Boring. About how one wrong action can ruin someone's life forever. David did not take his eyes off Blake, and how those consequences catch up with those who think they will remain unpunished. Something in his tone made the teenagers uneasy. After class, Blake accidentally bumped into David's briefcase. Papers scattered across the floor. Among them flashed a photograph of Lily. Oh, sorry, Blake said with feigned regret. David slowly picked up the photograph. It's all right. It happens. But when everyone left, he took out his phone and opened the app. The screen displayed red dots, GPS trackers on their backpacks. The hunt had begun. That same day, David followed them from the parking lot. The hidden camera recorded everything. Blake was handing off packets near the gym. Mason cornered a skinny kid. Connor was taking pictures with his phone in the locker room. Day 1, drug dealing, coercion, filming without consent, already enough for a criminal case. But that wasn't enough. He needed more. The next day, a fragile Asian girl walked into the classroom. Emma Chen. Mr. Clark, can I talk to you? Of course. They make me steal tests from the teacher's lounge. They have photographs. From the locker room, the girl's voice trembled. They say if I don't obey, they'll show everyone. David felt a familiar rage, the same feeling that engulfed him when he found Alice in her room with an empty bottle of pills in her hand. Alice, not Lily. his real daughter whom he lost 3 years ago. Emma, you don't owe them anything else. Do you understand? But the photos, that they'll have other problems soon, I promise. That evening, Martin Edwards, that was his real name, sat in a rented apartment, studying the screens of the monitors. The facial recognition program was scanning thousands of photographs, looking for dirt, and finding it. On the wall hung photographs of his previous projects. Michael Thompson committed suicide after a month of rehabilitation. Jennifer Morris disappeared, but he knew where to find the body. Roger Simmons hanged himself with his own scarf. They were all bullies. They all deserved death, just like these three. Martin opened his journal and began to write down the plan. Day 7, Blake Hunter, Mason Lee, Connor Stone. Targets selected. Psychological profiles completed. Blake, leader, narcissist, afraid of losing control. Mason, follower, aggressive, prone to violence. Connor, the weakest link, anxious, may break first. He looked up at the photograph of Alice. Soon, baby. Soon, Daddy will take revenge for you. A week passed. David continued to play the role of an ordinary teacher, while at night he transformed into a hunter. He watched, recorded, gathered evidence. Blake, Mason, and Connor sensed that something had changed. The new teacher looked at them strangely, too attentively. I don't like this Clark guy, Mason said when they gathered in an empty classroom. Just a regular loser, Blake scoffed. Like all the other teachers. Then why do I feel like he's watching us all the time? Connor nervously chewed his nails. What if he knows something? What can he know? Blake smirked confidently. We're careful. At that moment, the door opened. David Clark entered the classroom with a folder in his hands. Good evening, guys. Just the ones I was looking for. Something in his tone made them go cold. I want to show you something interesting. David opened the folder and laid out photographs on the table. Recognize these? In the pictures were the three of them, in compromising situations, with exact dates and times. Blake turned pale. Where did you get this? And that's not all. David turned on the tablet. A video began to play on the screen. Mason beating a younger student in the bathroom. What do you want? Connor asked hoarsely. Justice, yeah, and David put away the photographs. Do you know what will happen if this material gets to the press? To the police? To your parents? Silence hung in the air. Your lives will be over. Your parents' careers, too. Scandals, lawsuits, prison. Mason tried to stand up, but David stopped him with a look. Sit down. We're not done yet. David took out his phone and showed them a recording of a conversation. Hello, Mr. Hunter? This is an anonymous call. Your son is dealing drugs at school. I have video evidence. That's fake, Blake shouted. Want to check? David pressed a button. Blake's phone vibrated, a message from his father. Come home immediately, now. The faces of the teenagers turned into masks of horror. What did you do? Connor whispered. What I should have done 3 years ago. David stood up. When people like you drove my daughter to attempt suicide. The air in the classroom became thick. Your daughter? Lily Clark, remember? The quiet girl from your old school. The one you bullied until she swallowed a bottle of pills. Mason covered his face with his hands. She survived, but part of her died forever. Just like part of me. David approached the board and wrote one word, choice. You have a choice. You can continue to be monsters and face all the consequences of your actions. Or what? Blake asked barely audibly. Or you prove that you can change. David pulled documents from his bag. Orphanage New Hope. 4 hours a day after school. 8 hours on weekends. 6 months. This is blackmail, Connor whispered. This is justice. David placed the pens on the table. Sign, or tomorrow the whole town will know the truth about the Hunter, Lee, and Stone families. But the teenagers knew how to play games too. The day after their first visit to the shelter, Blake called an emergency meeting. "We need to find something on him," he said. "Everyone has skeletons in their closet." "How are we going to do that?" Mason asked. "My uncle works in security. He can run anyone through the databases." Connor shifted nervously. "What if we get caught? Then we all go down together." They waited 2 days for results, 2 days that Martin used to prepare for the next stage. He sat in his apartment, laying out photos of Alice in chronological order. Here she is smiling on her first day of school. Here she is sad after the first instance of bullying. Here she is trying to hide a bruise under her eye. And here is the last photo, in the hospital, with a tube in her throat. "They will pay, baby," he whispered. "Everyone will pay." On the table lay a plan of the abandoned school on Elm Street, the perfect place for the finale. Symbolic. Martin opened a box of medical supplies. The sleeping pills he borrowed from the hospital pharmacy. Fast-acting. Almost painless. Almost. The phone rang. "Hello? Uncle Rick, it's Blake. Can you run a check on someone through the databases?" Martin smiled. They took the bait. 2 days later, they had results, and what they found turned their world upside down. "David Clark died 3 years ago," Blake read from the laptop screen. "Car accident in Arizona." "Then who is this person?" Mason whispered. "Martin Edwards, former programmer from San Francisco, fired for hacking corporate systems." Blake continued reading. "Daughter, Alice Edwards, committed suicide 3 years ago after a suicide attempt due to school bullying." Silence fell. "So he lied about his daughter?" Connor asked. "Not exactly. She really did commit suicide, but not because of us." Blake closed the laptop. "Because of other kids, at another school, in another city." "Then why is he—" "Because we remind him of those who killed his daughter." Mason slowly began to grasp the whole picture. He went mad with grief, created a new identity for himself, tracked us down. "And now he's taking revenge on the wrong people," Connor added. But the worst was yet to come. "Guys," Blake said quietly, scrolling through other files. "There's something else here." "What?" "Police reports from other cities over the past 2 years. Mason stepped closer. "Read." "Michael Thompson, 17 years old, committed suicide after an unknown man began stalking and blackmailing him. Left a note. The teacher made me believe I was a monster." Connor turned pale. "This isn't the only case?" "Jennifer Morris, 16 years old, disappeared 3 months ago, last seen with a man posing as a social worker." Blake continued reading, and with each line the horror grew. With each name he realized they were not the first, and perhaps not the last. Roger Simmons, 18 years old, found hanged in his room. Video recordings of his confessions about school bullying were discovered on his computer. "Guys, this psycho, he's been doing this for 2 years, hunting teenagers he considers bullies. And what? And some of them are no longer alive." Blake's voice trembled with the realization of the scale of what was happening. Mason backed against the wall. "We're dealing with a serial killer." "Not a killer," Blake corrected. "Worse. He drives them to suicide, psychologically breaks them, and then watches as they destroy themselves." Connor began to shake. "What do we do?" "I don't know." Blake closed the laptop. "But if we go to the police, they won't believe us. He has too much dirt on us. So we're trapped? So we need to play his game and win." But Martin Edwards had been playing this game for much longer, and he was much better at it. In his apartment, he studied the plan for the final operation. On the wall hung a map of the city with marked points. Blake's house, Mason's house, Connor's house, the abandoned school. He knew their routes, their habits, their fears. He knew that Connor took sedatives. He knew that Mason hid his younger brother. He knew that Blake was stealing money from his mother. He knew where they hid their secrets, and he knew how to break them. Martin opened the diary and began to write. "Final phase, they know who I am. This is even better. Fear makes them vulnerable. I'll start with Connor. He's the weakest link. Then Mason, Blake, last. He needs to see how his friends die. He needs to understand that his pride led them to their deaths. He looked up at the photograph of Alice. Dad is almost there, sweetheart. Just a little more, and justice will prevail. The next day at school, he watched them with particular interest. Soon they would learn the whole truth, and then the real game would begin. The atmosphere at school was heating up with each passing day. The teenagers walked around, glancing over their shoulders. Martin observed them with sadistic pleasure. During class, he read them Edgar Allan Poe's story, The Telltale Heart. What does a murderer feel when he realizes he's about to be exposed? He asked, looking directly at Blake. Fear, the boy replied quietly. Correct. And what does fear do to a person? Drives him insane, Connor whispered. Excellent, Connor. See? You understand psychology better than you think. After class, Martin approached Connor. How's it at home? Fine. And your parents? Are they aware of your hobbies? Connor flinched. What hobbies? Gambling, debts. I wonder what your congresswoman mother will say when she finds out her son owes $40,000 to bookies. Connor's face turned as white as chalk. How do you know? I know a lot, Connor. For example, I know that tomorrow your creditors will come for the money. And if they don't get it, Martin leaned in closer. And I also know where you can get that money, quickly. He handed the boy a piece of paper. Address, time, come alone. And then your problems will disappear. Connor took the paper with a trembling hand. What if I don't come? Then tomorrow, very angry people will show up at school. And believe me, they're not as kind as I am. Martin stepped back, leaving the boy alone with his fears. The plan was entering its final stage. Just a few more hours, and justice would prevail. That evening, Connor didn't come home. His parents called friends, the school, the police. The boy had disappeared. Blake and Mason received a message at midnight. Want to see your friend? Come to the old school building on Elm Street. Alone. If you involve the police, Connor will die. You have 1 hour. The abandoned school had stood on the outskirts of town for 15 years. Broken windows, graffiti on the walls, the smell of mold and decay. Blake and Mason entered through the main entrance. Their footsteps echoed in the empty hallways. Flashlights trembled in their hands, illuminating shards of glass and debris. Connor! Mason shouted. The voice echoed through the corridors. Silence. Then, a faint, muffled response somewhere deep within the building. Their steps quickened. The floorboards creaked underfoot. To the auditorium. The door was ajar. Inside, on the stage, there was a chair. Connor sat on it, bound with tape. His mouth was sealed. His eyes were filled with terror. And next to him stood Martin Edwards. Welcome to class, he said calmly. He held a video camera in his hands. The red recording light blinked in the darkness. What do you want? Blake shouted. His voice cracked with fear. Justice. Real justice. The camera beeped softly. The recording began. Do you know how many children have taken their own lives because of people like you? 237. In the last 5 years, 237 children. We didn't kill anyone. No? What about Tyler Johnson? Blake and Mason froze. He's alive, Mason whispered. For now. But every day he writes in his diary about death. Every night he falls asleep thinking about how to end his life. Martin stepped closer to Connor. And you know what? Today one of you will join him. What do you want? A confession. On camera. A full confession of all your crimes, with all the details. And what if we refuse? Martin smiled, a terrifying, insane smile. Then Connor will jump off the roof of this building, and you will be found next to his body with incriminating evidence. He pulled a gun from his pocket. Of course, first you'll have to end it all out of remorse. Blake realized they had fallen into the trap of a madman. You're insane. I'm a father who lost his daughter, and I'll do everything to make sure this never happens again. Martin aimed the gun at Connor. You have 5 minutes. Start talking. Mason stepped forward. Wait, we'll tell you everything, but first, let Connor go. Talk first, then we'll see. Blake looked at his bound friend. Connor was crying, trying to say something through the tape. Okay, Blake surrendered. We did terrible things. More details. We bullied everyone at school, beat them up, filmed it, blackmailed them. More. Made them steal, sell drugs, engage in. The camera recorded every word. Continue. For the next half hour, Blake and Mason recounted everything. Every crime, every act of cruelty, every broken life. Martin listened with a stone face. Enough, he finally said. Now the last question. What is it? Do you regret what you did? Yes, they answered in unison. No, Martin shook his head. You regret getting caught. He raised the gun. You know what I've learned in 2 years of hunting people like you? People don't change. Never. That's not true. Michael Thompson swore he had changed too, right before he jumped off the bridge. Martin stepped closer. Jennifer Morris promised to do better. Right before she drank acid, Blake realized they were all going to die. Roger Simmons wanted to atone. He hanged himself with his own scarf. You killed them. No, they killed themselves when they realized the truth about themselves. Martin pointed the camera at Connor. And now let's see what your friend will do when he finds out you told the police about him. He ripped the tape off Connor's mouth. Connor, your friends just turned you in. They told about all your crimes. Tomorrow you'll go to prison. That's not true, Connor shouted. See for yourself. Martin turned the camera to him. Their confession played on the screen. Connor's face twisted in horror. Blake? Mason? Wait, he made us. No one forced anyone, Martin said calmly. They decided to save their own skins. He untied the ropes from Connor's hands but left his legs bound. Now choose, Connor. Either you do what needs to be done yourself, or I'll help you. Martin placed a bottle of pill in front of the boy. It's quick, almost painless. Connor looked at the pills, then at his friends. Don't do it, Mason shouted. Why live, Connor asked. Now everyone knows who I am. We'll find a way out. What way? I'm a monster. He's right. With trembling fingers, Connor picked up the bottle. The plastic crunched in his hand. Time slowed down. Memories rushed through his mind. How he made younger students eat from the trash can. How he filmed their humiliations. How he laughed at their tears. Martin was right. He really was a monster. And monsters don't deserve to live. Connor, no! But the boy was already opening the cap. At that moment, the police burst into the hall. Heavy boots thundered on the wooden floor. Gun on the floor! Hands up! Martin turned, holding the gun. Shots. 1, 2, 3. The echo rolled through the hall. Martin fell. The metal of the gun clattered to the floor. But a smile played on his face. Too late, he rasped through the blood. Too late. The sound of swallowing. Connor was already swallowing the pills. Detective Rodriguez rushed to the boy, trying to make him spit out the medicine. But it was too late. Call an ambulance! Blake and Mason stood aside, watching their friend die before their eyes. It's our fault, Mason whispered. No, the detective said. It's the psychopath's fault. But deep down, both teenagers knew the truth. They were indeed monsters. And Martin Edwards simply showed them that. Connor died on the way to the hospital. The next day, the video of their confessions hit the internet. Someone from the police leaked the recording. Overnight, Blake and Mason became the most hated teenagers in the country. They were expelled from school. Their parents disowned them. Friends turned away. They became outcasts, exactly what they once made other children. A month later, Mason attempted to take his own life. He survived, but was left paralyzed. Blake disappeared. Some said he changed his name and moved to another state. Others believed he was dead. And in the quiet room of a psychiatric hospital, Martin Edwards lay paralyzed, smiling. The machines quietly beeped around him. Bullets had damaged his spine but did not kill him. He could not move, could not speak, but he could think. And in his thoughts, he replayed the faces of the children he had saved from bullies over and over again. Michael Thompson, Jennifer Morris, Roger Simmons, Connor Stone, and that was just a small part of the list. A nurse entered the room. Her footsteps softly rustled on the linoleum. She checked the IV. The plastic tube gurgled quietly. "How are you doing, Mr. Edwards?" He could not respond, but his eyes burned. "The doctor says your nephew will be visiting you soon. He will take care of you." Martin closed his eyes. He had no nephew, but he had a new identity, new documents, a new plan. And when he got out of here, and he would get out, the hunt would continue, because bullies do not disappear. And justice must prevail, at any cost. Time passed. The world continued to turn, and somewhere in it, there were always those who needed saving. In the neighboring room lay Mason Lee, half of his body paralyzed after a failed suicide attempt. He stared at the ceiling and thought about Connor, about Tyler, about all the children they had broken. Martin was right. People do not change. They just learn to hide better who they really are. And sometimes the truth about a person is so terrible that it's better not to know, better to pretend that monsters do not exist, that justice always wins, that every story has a happy ending. But this story is not one of those. In this story, monsters are real, justice is blind, and there is no happy ending. There is only choice, and the consequences of that choice, which are sometimes worse than the choice itself. And somewhere in California, in the small town of Whitefield, 18-year-old Tyler Johnson closes his laptop after watching the news about Connor Stone's death. The screen freezes on images of an abandoned school, police tape, a body under a sheet. Tyler slowly smiles. Justice is a dish best served cold, and his dish has only just begun to cook. Because people do not change, but they can be taught to seek revenge, the right kind of revenge. 3 years have passed since Blake Hunter, Mason Lee, and Connor Stone turned his school life into hell. 3 years of therapy, treatment, healing. 3 years that taught him the most important skill, how to read people, how to find their weaknesses, how to make them do what needs to be done. Tyler rose from his chair and approached the mirror. 21 years old, a degree in psychology from Stanford University, his own practice, an impeccable reputation, perfect disguise. His diplomas and patient commendations hung on the wall. Best Child Psychologist of the Year for outstanding contributions to the rehabilitation of troubled teens. If only they knew. The phone rang. Tyler glanced at the screen. "Mrs. Harper?" "Dr. Johnson's clinic. How can I help you?" "Doctor, it's urgent. My son, he has started again. He is hitting younger kids at school. The principal is threatening expulsion." Tyler smiled. "Bring him in tomorrow at 4. We will definitely find the root of the problem." The root of the problem. As if he didn't know where to look. The next day, the Harper family entered his office. The mother, a nervous woman in an expensive suit, constantly checking her phone. The father, a man with cold eyes and a habit of interrupting others. And between them, 12-year-old Jamie. The boy sat huddled in the chair while his parents talked about his problems. "He has become uncontrollable," the mother said. "Teachers complain that he bullies younger kids." "We have tried everything," the father added. "Punishments, revoking privileges, even the belt. Nothing helps." Tyler observed the family dynamics. He saw how the parents spoke about the child as if he were not in the room, how the father clenched his fists when he got angry, how the mother withdrew when her son tried to touch her. A classic picture. Emotional neglect leading to physical violence. "Jamie," Tyler said softly when the parents fell silent. "Tell me how you feel at home." "Nothing," the boy whispered. "Mothing is a feeling too. a very painful feeling. The parents exchanged glances. Doctor, maybe it would be better for us to talk without him. No, Tyler's voice became a bit firmer. Jamie is the main patient here. His voice is the most important. For the next 40 minutes, Tyler carefully drew the truth out of the boy about how his father hits him for discipline, about how his mother ignores him when he cries, about how he feels invisible at home. Jamie, do you feel strong at school? The boy nodded. When you make other kids afraid of you, do you feel the control that you don't have at home? Another nod. That's okay. You're not bad. You're just trying to cope with the pain in the only way you know how. The parents frowned. Doctor, are you justifying his behavior? I'm explaining its reasons. Tyler turned to them. Jamie wasn't born aggressive. He was made that way. An awkward silence fell. I recommend individual therapy, once a week, for 6 months. When the family left, Tyler opened a new folder. On the cover page, he wrote, Jamie Harper, Project Number 1. For the next few months, he patiently worked with the boy, session after session, carefully implanting the necessary ideas. Jamie, who is to blame for your pain? Me? No, those who hurt you. Who are they? My parents. Correct. And what did they deserve for what they did to you? Punishment? What kind of punishment? Gradually, carefully, Tyler shaped the child's mind with the image of just retribution. Not in direct words. He was too smart for that. Through metaphors, stories, therapeutic exercises. Jamie, imagine you are a judge before you are the people who tormented an innocent child. What sentence will you give? Prison? And what if prison doesn't change them? What if they continue to torment children? Then they need to be stopped forever? You're a very smart boy, Jamie. After 4 months of therapy, what Tyler had patiently awaited happened. Jamie Harper set the house on fire while his parents slept. They burned alive. When the police and social services asked the boy why he did it, he answered with the simple words he learned in therapy. They hurt me. Dr. Johnson said that was wrong, that I need to protect myself. But when the detectives came to Tyler, he showed them all the session records. Neatly edited records where he supposedly tried to teach the child to cope with anger in peaceful ways. I'm shocked, he told the investigators. Jamie seemed like such a progressive patient. The boy was sent to a psychiatric facility for minors. The case was closed as a family tragedy, and Tyler opened a new folder, Project Number 2. Over the next 6 months, a wave of unexplained family tragedies swept across the country. Teenagers killed parents, teachers, school principals. All of them had undergone therapy with different psychologists. It was impossible to find a connection. Because Tyler worked through a network, he carefully selected colleagues, young, ambitious, dissatisfied psychologists. He shared with them revolutionary methods for working with aggressive children. He taught them to see children as victims and adults as perpetrators. He was creating an army of children programmed for revenge. A year after Connor Stone's death, Tyler decided to make one last visit. The psychiatric hospital greeted him with sterile corridors and the smell of disinfectant. He introduced himself as a relative and received permission for a visit. Martin Edwards lay in a ward connected to life support machines. His eyes were open, but his body did not move. Hello, Mr. Edwards, Tyler said quietly, sitting down next to the bed. My name is Tyler Johnson. I think you remember that name. Martin's eyes widened. Yes, I'm that boy, the victim of Blake, Mason, and Connor. Tyler leaned in closer. I want to thank you. Martin tried to say something but could only blink. You opened my eyes. You showed me that justice is possible, although your methods were a bit primitive. Tyler pulled out a tablet and showed Martin the news reports. The Harper family, Teacher Mills, Principal Thompson, Judge Clark. With each name, Martin's eyes grew wider. They are all dead, all killed by the children they broke. Martin desperately blinked, trying to attract the attention of the medical staff. Don't worry. No one will believe a paralyzed murderer. Tyler put the tablet away. And I will continue your work. Just better. He stood up. You see, you killed children, and I taught them to kill adults. You were a lone avenger. I created a system. Tyler headed for the exit. Thank you for the lesson, teacher. The student has surpassed the master. Behind him, Martin was struggling to press the nurse call button, but his paralyzed fingers wouldn't obey. And in the hallway, Tyler's footsteps echoed as he moved towards a new project, a new child, a new family, a new justice. 2 years later, alarming statistics appeared in the news. The number of cases of child violence against adults had increased by 300%. Psychologists threw up their hands. Sociologists spoke of a generational crisis. And in a quiet office on the outskirts of Los Angeles, Dr. Tyler Johnson closed the file on yet another patient. A photograph of Martin Edwards, cut from a newspaper, hung on the wall. The caption at the bottom read, "To the teacher from a grateful student." The phone rang, a new family, a new problem, a new opportunity for justice. Dr. Johnson's clinic, how can I help? The voice on the line trembled with despair. Doctor, my son, he is threatening us with murder. He says we deserve to die for raising him poorly. Please help. Tyler smiled. Of course I will help. When can you come in? The cycle continued, but now it had become much more complex and much more terrifying, because the most dangerous monsters are those who heal others. And the most perfect revenge is the one carried out by the hands of the victims. In a world where anyone can become both the executioner and the victim, justice turns into an endless chain of retribution. And this chain will never stop. Never.